It's time for a Gophers therapy session after an unacceptable loss versus Northwestern. I've got a lot of questions and we need the answers why.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
Listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Even on the hard days, folks, we're here to talk Gophers, but we want to understand why. Why are things happening a certain way in this last Gophers loss, in this unacceptable 37-34 loss in overtime in which the Gophers gave up 21 points in the fourth quarter. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I am still a little bit upset about it all. I'm still shook at what took place to give up 21 points in a quarter. The fourth quarter of that note is not okay. So we're going to dive into it today. We're going to talk about little Gophers therapy session and asking the whys. Then we're going to go into where do we go from here, and finally, what is happening to this defense. So sit back, hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the talks as we get through the issues of this Gophers team and what needs to be addressed moving forward. That and more here on today's show, which is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team for faster and for free. Post your job at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Now, let's talk about this, because regardless of the Darius Taylor injury in the game, regardless of a high pass that wasn't caught in OT, regardless of whatever excuses folks have, it comes down to Minnesota was afraid to lose this game rather than ready to take the win, take it from the opponent, and take the win full force. And that showed. It showed absolutely in this game. So now we have to ask ourselves why. Because to me, this loss falls a majority on coaches, on Coach Fleck, on Coach Harbaugh, on Coach Rossi. They take 85 to 90% of the blame of this loss, plain and simple. The other 10% I'll put on defense, or the defensive players, and the other 5% I'll put on the offensive players. Now, that's not saying the offense was some miraculous, fantabulous thing. But because the offense was in shambles in that second half, so was the defense. But a vast, vast majority of that was play calling. So my biggest whys in this game, number one, is why did we abandon the pass game? Our quarterback started 9 for 9 and then had 2 incompletions to follow that in the third quarter, in the first drive of the third quarter. Now, from those 2 incompletions, the next drive you come out with a run, which Northwestern predicted, having seen how we played and how many times we gave Darius Taylor the ball. So they lose 4 yards on the first play of the second drive of the third quarter. So you lose 4 yards, and then that sets you up to be long, second and long, third and long. So at that point, the Gophers go to 2 more passes. Now, both of those passes were completed, but they ended up being completed 1 yard short of the first down. You end up 4th and 1, and you end up punting the ball. So for those not keeping track, that's 11 for 13 in passing through the third quarter, second drive. Now, the team proceeds to run 4 straight running plays on the next drive, in which Northwestern expected. And they stuffed Darius Taylor multiple times, but then, or he'd get like 2 yards here, 2 yards there, ends up 4th and 1 again. And Darius Taylor absolutely bails out the Gophers on an incredible run for a touchdown, which would have been a negative play tackled in the backfield for most players. Now, why would that have been a negative play? Because they stopped him in the backfield, but he kept his legs moving. He kept the contact balance, hits outside, and again breaks free. But again, Northwestern was expecting every single one of those runs, setting themselves up to stop the run. But the Gophers kept going for it. The next drive, which Northwestern expects a run. First play, run, stuffed for 1 yard. Then another run, stuffed for 2 yards. Pass on third and long, of course, because what else are you going to do on third and long? Incomplete, punt. Do you see where this is going? Do you see where this is going? Because you should. Because we've seen it for the last 3 or 4 years now. Whether it's Shiraka, whether it's Sanford, whether it's Harbaugh, it is too damn predictable. And having immensely talented running backs like Mo Ibrahim, like Rodney Smith, like Bucky Irving, like Darius Taylor, plus a good offensive line play has bailed out the Gophers time and time again and bailed out those play calling. So my next question is this. I've thought about it a little bit. Is PJ Fleck overriding the calls? And does he call for this style of play in the second half? Is this why Coach Shiraka left for Rutgers? And many were like, whoa, where did this come from? Is that what we're seeing? Because if this offense that we saw in the second half was not the same as the first half offense, the one called in the first half. They were completely different offenses, two separate, very different things. The offenses in half one, you saw passes on the early downs, on first and second downs. You saw things mixing it up, and then the mixing up of those early down pass calls turned into openings in the ground game calls for Darius Taylor to then get up more yardage and more carries and more opportunities and more breakaways. Mixing it up helped the entire offense, and it opened up the ground game. And then doing that led to longer drives of 8 plays, of 10 plays, of 6 plays, and scoring. So what is happening with the play calling? Because in that second half, we ended up with 4-play drives, 4-play drive, 3-play drive, 5-play drive, and it was all runs on first down. Almost every single one of them, I believe one drive, the first drive of the third quarter, the one that still kind of looked like the first half, had an early down throwing play. After that, it was always a run to start, always. And Northwestern expected that. On second down, a lot of the time, it was almost always a run. And Northwestern expected that. So what is happening with this play calling? Because we saw 2 vastly different halves, almost 2 completely different teams. From the second drive of that third quarter, after those pass completions happened, then all of a sudden we went away from it until the start of overtime. That play calling is what we've seen for the past 4 years, a lot of the past 4 years. And that was a large part of why we lost this game. Now, number 2 of my questions, why are there so many communication issues? These last 2 games have had a whole lot more explosive plays on this Gophers defense, and the openings given up are all over the place. On top of that, a lot of dumb penalties, which we never do. The Gophers program has been known to be one of the fewest penalized teams, yet there have been many penalties in these last 2 games, like silly penalties you cannot take, and the worst timing. There was a dumb penalty in the opening half where Maverick had the third down stop and then hits the quarterback late after sliding, and all of a sudden, it might not even been the quarterback on that one. One of them was a quarterback hit. One of them was just a random player hitting them late after. And it gave them a longer drive because it was on third down after a stop. They should be punting, but instead we're giving them more opportunities to continue to move the ball and take time of possession. The discipline on this team feels so hit or miss, and that is very, very strange for this Gophers team because you've got late penalties on third down stops. You've got blown coverages. You've got biting on double moves. You've got blasphemous touchbacks where you could have had the ball pinned down on the 1-yard line. All of those different things lead to a win in this game, regardless of the ugly play, regardless of mistakes happening left and right. You take one different thing, one critical, disciplined moment, and the Gophers walk away with an ugly win. Now, there shouldn't have been even an ugly win to be up 21 points in the fourth quarter. The discipline led to them being picked apart in the fourth quarter by Ben Bryant, a quarterback who is intelligent, who has been playing, who has veteran experience. But we treated him like he's never started at this level. My third and final question is, why did Sean Tyler and Zach Evans not get a touch? Now, don't get me wrong. Darius Taylor is special. He is a dude. He is the future. He has so much promise, and he is very, very exciting. But if you run his wheels off in his freshman year, that's not helping his longevity. That's not helping him be a playmaker for the long term for this team. Evans showed fans the talent in last year's Northwestern game, in the last 2 spring games out there. So why is he not getting a single touch? Now, I understand if there's something going on off the field, but say that then. Let us know that, because right now your fan base is confused. Because right now it's just being said that it isn't earned. Okay, then put him on the field and let him earn it. When you're up 21 points in the third quarter and you look to have the game in hand, put him on the field for a couple snaps and see if he earns it. Help your young back and Darius Taylor get a breather. Take himself out of some bang plays. On top of that, Sean Tyler isn't a young guy who, yes, he might have put the ball on the ground 2 games ago, but are you going to have him in purgatory for the rest of the time then? Or why does your veteran running back not get a single touch? A guy who's been two 1,000 years back to back in rushing yards, and you're not going to give him a single touch in this game in which you are running the ball a lot anyway? All of that stuff, those were factors. They made absolutely no sense, and we need answers, plain and simple. Now, I'm not calling for anyone's job at all, not at all. But something needs to change, and it needs to change yesterday, because blowing a 21-point lead in a single quarter against an interim coach and a piecemeal team, that's unacceptable, and the fans and your players deserve better. Now, I want to dive into where do we go from here? What does the season look like? What is this Gophers outlook after an unbearable loss to Northwestern? That's where we're steering this thing coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs, because these days every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because it's the go-to space for a lot of folks looking for a job, connecting with others who have jobs, connecting with those they've met along the journey. It is one of the best places, if not the best place, to be, not only to present your job, but just connecting with others in the workforce. So LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And you can go on, create a free job post at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege, then add a purple hiring frame on your individual personal profile picture so others in your network can help you connect and find the right fit for your team. On top of that, they have simple tools like screening questions to make it easier to focus on the right questions with the right skills so you can prioritize who to interview quicker. And it's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post about your job for free. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post about your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Gophers fans, thank you so much for listening to Locked On Golden Gophers and making us your daily listen when it comes to Gophers content. Now, we got to touch on a subject that a lot of folks probably have very negative views on, and that is, where do we go from here? Because what will the season look like moving forward? Now, this game was an important game for Minnesota because a lot of fans, media, Vegas counted this one in favor of the Gophers. The line for Vegas on the season wins was 7.5 for Minnesota. So dropping a game that was counted as a very, very likely victory for you honestly moves that line to 6.5 for most people. Now, in order to get back to that 7.5, you have to go out there and win a game that you aren't supposed to. But if the Gophers play on the field like they did this last weekend, if the play calling, if the decision-making happens like the second half of this last weekend, like the fourth quarter of this last weekend, look, they're not going to win a game that they're not supposed to. So right now, it is hard to give a full analysis of what could happen with this team. Now, many are going out there saying, we're only going to win 3 or 4 games. And others are saying the bowl game is the ceiling. Now, I'm not all the way there yet, but there are some ways to look at this thing. Louisiana is the next game on the schedule. It is a must-win game, but you also clearly can't overlook this opponent. Not for one quarter, because that's how you blow a lead. That's how you blow an entire game, and you've proven that now. That's going to be used against you the entire season. So you have to go out there. You have to put a huge stamp on this Louisiana game, and it can't be just a close victory. You've got to go out there and prove the fans wrong that it was more of an error in judgment as opposed to what is going to be regular this season. You have to go out there and make a statement this upcoming weekend at home. Then you go from there. You've got Illinois, you've got Michigan State, you've got Purdue. Those are some of the next games after you have Michigan and Iowa. But those 3 games are going to be huge for this Gophers team. Now, Illinois has looked bad, and you have that game at home. So that can still play in your favor. Michigan State has looked pretty bad, not great. And you have that game at home. Then finally, Purdue has looked like a hot mess on the season, and you could go and take that one as well. They've been having as many communications issues as the Gophers had in this fourth quarter. So it comes down to there are 4 very winnable games on the schedule still. Those 4 wins put you at 5, I believe, right? No, they put you at 6. They put you at 6. I'm tripping right now. We're 2-2. So those 4 wins would put you at 6 and in a bowl game. Now, I'm calling all those games winnable, but at this point, I am not locking in anything else beyond that because it has to be earned by this Gophers team. It isn't going to get the benefit of the doubt moving forward with what just happened this weekend. So Iowa and Wisconsin are the next 2 toss-ups for me, because if we play like that first half team we saw versus Northwestern, those games we can be in, and you can potentially steal one or both of those games. If you play less than that, if you play any semblance less than that first half team you saw, then those games are going to be losses. So which team are you going to be? Which Gophers team is going to show up? Who is this Gophers program? Now, I have absolutely no faith at all that the Gophers are going to be in that Michigan or Ohio State game at this point. Plain and simple. And I will still pull for them. I'm not going to pull the fan card away or anything. I'm not going to not root for them, but that will not change. I will not see them in those games having a shot at upsetting those teams, because I don't believe that a mood swing team that I've been watching these past 2 weeks will be able to hold it together against a top 5 team in the country. So to me right now, you're looking at potentially a 6-6 season, and even that has to be earned. But then you have the upside of getting a 7th win in there if you can put it together and play like the first half consistently the rest of the season. That is a big ask. That is a tough ask. But if you want the respect, if you want to show that that was more fluke than what is to come, then you got to put the excuses away and you got to do it. This game versus Northwestern was supposed to be a cleanup game, a get-right game, a fix-the-passing game, and get confidence game. And it looked that way. It looked like it was headed that way. And then we had the fourth quarter. And it became, rather than a cleanup game, rather than a get-right game, it became a staple of Minnesota sports fandom. And that hurts. But there's a biggest concern that I have walking away from this game, and it is what is going on with this defense. Something that was seen as a strength for the Minnesota Golden Gophers, is it now a concern? We're going to talk about that to wrap up today's show of Locked On Golden Gophers. All right, folks, first I want to talk to you about our Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company, and that Game Changer is none other than Darius Taylor. I expect him to walk away with a 3rd straight Big Ten Freshman of the Week, and Athletic Brewing has been completely changing the game of non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. I tried one of the tropical sours recently, and it slapped. I'm not going to lie to you. It was good, and it tasted just like a real sour. So I was very impressed by them. Their brews are great tasting and award-winning, and they have beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, golden sours, and more. And best of all, there's no hangovers, folks. So you can keep going, and you don't have to worry about those repercussions or anything that comes with hangovers. That's music to most people's ears. Now, you can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use the code of Locked On to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Athletic Brewing Company and athleticbrewing.com, and near beer exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, Gophers fans, we are wrapping up today's show by talking about what happened defensively. Now, the better question might be, what didn't go wrong defensively in that fourth quarter? And there were a lot of hiccups throughout the entirety of the game for the defense. But let's start with this. Missed tackles. Missed tackles left and right all over this game throughout the duration of the game. There were probably more than actually counted against the Gophers because Northwestern kept having holding penalties that called back explosive plays. But there were 13 missed tackles credited to this Minnesota Gophers team. That cannot happen, no matter who you are playing. If you are playing a Power 5 school, you are going to get eaten alive if you have 13 missed tackles in a game. So that was porous from the jump. But on top of that, you've got things that this team doesn't do, including 3 penalties, and at least 2 of those came on third down stops, which gives the team new life. It breathes new life into that offense and allows them to basically start their drive all over again in even better positioning on the field. So you got penalty issues, you've got missed tackles, and then on top of that, your veteran players are making big mistakes, biting on double moves. Justin Wally gave up 115 yards and a touchdown in coverage on 4 receptions. That's a vet. That's one of our leaders. And although I believe most of it came on an 80-yard explosive in the first half, on top of that, he bit on a double move that you cannot do to give up their only score in the first half. Now, what we noticed from Northwestern in this matchup is they really attacked the Will linebacker in coverage against Devin Williams. He had 8 targets against him. They all turned into receptions. He gave up 78 yards, 4 first downs, and 1 touchdown. So they really attacked that linebacker coverage. They also attacked the outside coverage, the DBs on the outside. So Justin Wally and Trayvon Jones, they attacked more in the boundaries, and that seemed to be more against zone play. They were finding the gaps on the outside, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But if you flip to the North Carolina game, they really attacked the interior of this Gophers defense. So they attacked the interior DBs and the linebackers. Henderson, Darius Green, Devin Williams, Aiden Gooseby. Now, both Gooseby and Green move into the slot on certain packages, and that is where they were seeing a lot of those one-on-one man coverages, and that's when they were attacked. But Northwestern attacked more on the outside with the Wallies and the Trayvon Jones. And you could notice more of this with the boundary line receptions, with the out routes, with the comebacks. Now, the way the Gophers were getting attacked in these games from North Carolina and Northwestern clearly wasn't the same, but what was put on film was clearly showing teams they thought they saw openings they could attack, and then they ended up being successful with those openings when they did attack them. So overall, I believe it's tough to gather where this defense is going wrong, but right now we've given up 809 passing yards in the last 2 games. So maybe the secondary that I was saying, I'm not too worried about them as we opened up this year, maybe they are a bigger worry than we initially anticipated after games 1 and 2, because those first 2 matchups may have been against quarterbacks that just aren't that great. On top of that, they are quarterbacks that couldn't look off the coverage. And I think that's the biggest thing to really kind of worry about and look at. And as I rewatch, I'm definitely going to try to take a little bit more of time looking and breaking down those coverages and how it was played, because I think that playing those 2 quarterbacks in the first 2 games that didn't really look off coverages, they were kind of looking where they were going to go with the ball. I think that developed bad habits for this Gophers secondary on trying to play hero ball, on trying to be reading the quarterbacks and jumping routes and making a huge play in interceptions. But then you go on to play a Drake May, you go on to play a Ben Bryant, who have experience. They're veteran quarterbacks that have been starting for longer than just this season. And they understand, if I look off of my coverage, if I want to go over here on the left and I'm looking to the right for 1, 2, give it 3 beats, then all of a sudden that safety is going to cheat that way, and I can go back to the left where I know there's going to be an opening on the backside if the timing is right. So if I look off my coverage and I'm going this way in the open route, then the safety might cheat that direction, opening up a gap here where my route is, where I truly want that person in the second or third of my progression should wind up. Now, you could see wide receivers getting past the safeties in single high looks early in this game, and I tweeted about it. I was like, you don't love to see that. Now, we hadn't seen any completions deep at that point, but you kept seeing him go for it deep down the field and having some cushion and some room, but he would overthrow it or underthrow it, and it wasn't there. But it eventually hit because the coverage continued to have those errors, those blips where they would get behind the safety and it was still all over the map. And eventually it became a prominent issue in the fourth quarter where they were picked apart in the zones and then they could get caught cheating every once in a while. So it comes back to discipline. But it's not just from the young guys, it's the vets too. It's your Newbin, it's your Wally, it's your Trayvon Jones, who's been playing for 5 years now. The Gophers have a massive amount to clean up, and you need to expect for them in the Louisiana and the Michigan and the Iowa games to be attacked through the air. Plain and simple. Teams are going to continue to attack in the passing game until the Gophers prove that they can stop it. And they're going to have to prove it, or they're going to be susceptible to shootouts and high passing attacks against the defense. We're going to see if this team can respond or not very soon, but that's going to do it for us today at Locked On Golden Gophers. If you have any questions that you want dived in this week, let me know in the comments over on YouTube. We'll be sure to touch on it in the mailbag this week, but that will do it for us. Row the boat, Sky Yuma, Go Gophers, as always, and please don't forget to subscribe.